各位早晨。咁啊。
Good morning, members. We have already found a quorum. It is also time to start. For the first item, in relation to the public officers, they may attend, but then there's no need for them to answer questions. This is because at the end of the last meeting, we reached the stage of putting the matter to the vote. Let me start with some opening remarks. For the legislative year 2016-17, as of the last meeting, we approved 8 items. The total amount of money approved was $18.4517 billion. At today's meeting, there are 6 items for discussion, involving a total amount of $58.5803 billion. If all the funding requests are to be endorsed by members, then the cumulative number of approved items will be 14, involving a total amount of $77.032 billion. Disregarding the money required for land resumption and computerization involving $2.8684 billion, the total amount of money needed for works would be $74.1636 billion. Just want to remind members that if you have direct or indirect pecuniary interest in relation to the discussion items at today's meeting, please, in accordance with 83A of the Rules of Procedures, disclose the nature of the interest before you speak. I want to draw attention to Rule 84 in relation to the requirements concerning voting on matters that you have a direct pecuniary interest. Paper PWSC 2016-17 45 7580CL, such formation associated infrastructural works for development of columbarium, crematorium, and related facilities at St. Rich Cemetery. The purpose of the paper is to upgrade part of 75HCL so to Category A at an estimated cost of $2,566.4 million in month-of-the-day prices. At the meeting of the 20th of April, we finished the discussion of the paper. We entered the stage of voting. At that time, Mr. Eddie would like to have a division, and at that time the meeting time came to a close. That's why we have left the matter until today, and we'll have a division. We have public officers in attendance, but then we have finished with the Q&A session, so I'm not going to introduce the public officers one by one, and you can refer to the name list that has been tabled for your reference. Now I put the matter to the vote, and in accordance with the request of Mr. Eddie, there will be a division, and the bell will be rung for 5 minutes.
我提醒各位，
I just want to remind members that the matter that we are putting to the vote is Item 75 HCL in paper PWSC 2016-1745, such formation and associated infrastructural works for development of columbarium, crematorium, and related facilities at Sandy Bridge Cemetery. Just a reminder. Now put the matter to the vote. Before I close the voting, please check your vote. All right. Voting has ended. The result is to be displayed. 31 members present, 27 for, no objection, 3 abstentions. I declare that the matter has been approved. Thank you. We are now at item 272RS, High-Tech Sports Park, paper PWSC 2017-18-2. The purpose of the paper is to invite members to upgrade the remaining part of the item to Category A at an estimated cost of $31,898 million in money of the day prices. On the 27th of February 2017, the administration consulted the views of the Home Affairs panel in relation to the proposed works. Members did not object to refer the matter to this subcommittee. The main points of the discussion have already been tabled for your reference. In attendance with the foreign public officers to answer your questions, Mrs. Betty Fung, Permanent Secretary for Home Affairs, Mr. Yang Tak-Kern, Commissioner for Sports, Ms. Linda Law, PAS for Home Affairs, as well as Mr. Felix Zhang, Senior Quality Surveyor, all from the Home Affairs Bureau. Members who would like to ask questions, please press your button to request to speak. Mr. Chen Ying, 4 minutes. Thank you, Mr. Chairman. Well, I support the project to build the High-Tech Sports Park so as to promote sports development. I do have a question concerning the financial side of the matter. Paragraph 14. Well, we have the item contingencies, and then if you go to paragraph 20, then you know about the incentive. There will be 3 that will be losing the bid. So $60 million or 50% of their actual cost will be awarded so as to compensate for the losing bidders. You find it in 20B. There is this big incentive. It has been explained that this is for the matter of acquiring the intellectual property rights. So my question is, in relation to this kind of bid incentive for unsuccessful tenderers, I want to know whether it has been practiced elsewhere by other governments. Has there been a precedent? And what about our own government works? Have we ever provided such a bid incentive? My second question is, in relation to the actual cost, 50% of the actual cost incurred or a bid incentive of $60 million. I want to know how you arrived at such a figure. This is because, according to my understanding, bidders must, of course, bear a certain kind of risk. Of course, you may say that this is quite a huge project. You would like to attract qualified and high-quality tenderers to put in a bid. This is understandable. But how come that you would like to provide a bid incentive to a degree of as much as $60 million? Mrs. Betty Fung. Thank you, Mr. Chen, for your question. For this bid incentive, in relation to the administration, this is the first time that we have got this arrangement. This is mainly because for the High-Tech Sports Park, there are four main features. First of all, the scale is great, occupying 28 hectares, four major facilities, the main stadium, public sports ground, indoor sports center, as well as public open space. Well, this is a DBO contract, quite different from our other contracts, and the requirements are also high. As to expertise to be required, it will be extensive and demanding. This is very different from the usual sports facilities that we have been building. Some of the facilities have to be operated along commercial lines. There are also retail facilities, and you need expertise for major sports events, and you have to take care of the turf. Moreover, for the financial risk in the project, it is also high, and the bidder has to take care of the operating costs, share the revenue with the government in the future. If there is an element of instability in terms of the revenue, the risk has to be has to be borne by the bidder, and also the bidding process will also be expensive. Generally speaking, for the four finalists, each tenderer would need to put together a team of experts. It will take $100 to $200 million in Hong Kong for tenderers that can bear such a huge cost. There won't be too many of them, and this is also the case worldwide. So we believe that there is a need to provide a bid incentive. Now we are providing a bid incentive of $16 million, or 50% of the actual cost incurred, whichever is lower, accounting for less than 0.02% of the total cost of $31.9 billion. So the percentage is more or less the same as that provided elsewhere. Well, in Hong Kong, for public works projects, we haven't provided for such an arrangement. For other public organizations, our understanding that this has been provided. It is quite common elsewhere. In Australia, recently, they are building the Sydney Convention and Conference Centre. They have also provided a bid incentive. In Montreal, Canada, again, for the redevelopment of a bridge, the same arrangement has been organized, and then the percentage is also more or less the same as here. Mr. Lau Kok Fun. Thank you, Mr. Chairman. Basically, the DAB in principle supports the Kai Tak Sports Park. This is because for the sports sector as well as the community at large, we would like to have more sports facilities so as to promote sport, whether we're talking about elite sport or sport for all. Now, for this sports park, we are going to have the design, build, and operate approach. We believe that, and it can be seen that the amount of money involved is huge. The total amount involved will be $30 billion in a few years' time. Now, we have all seen that for government projects, yes, they will come here to get the electrical to approve a certain amount of money, but at the end of the day, there will always be an overrun of costs. Money will be given to the consultant as well as the contractors. Now, the consultants may be slow in issuing the drawing plans, and then contractors will be delayed as a result. Now, for this case, it is a DBO approach, so we have the same person doing the design work as well as the building part. So are you more confident that there won't be any overrun of costs, and you have sort of barred against the risk of having to come back here to get money to cover the overrun of the cost? Now, the operation period will be long, 25 years. Now, for the $20–30 billion to be involved in the project, I think the successful tenderer will certainly make a profit. Now, there will be 25 years down the line. What would happen if the tenderer is being slack in the management? If the Home Affairs Bureau or the administration as a whole would like to replace the operator, can we do it, or do we have to do it by compensating for the loss. Understand that there is a sharing of revenue. Please explain about the split. Otherwise, the tenderer may think that it has already collected tens of billions of dollars, and it may not be motivated to be very positive. And I'm afraid that it will be very slack in management. Like in the case of the Hong Kong Stadium, it is idle for most of the time. Even for our football league competitions, they are not able to go there. So in the case of the Kai Tak Sports Park, can you assure that such will not happen again, so that more sports events will take place at the Kai Tak Sports Park? Mrs. Fong, in relation to the project cost, I think you recall that in 2015, we got money for advanced works. For the past 18 months, we have already recruited technical as well as operational contractors. They have laid down a lot of groundwork, and therefore information given to you today is very detailed. We have come up with some estimates. Well, $23.8 billion was the sum given in September last year. And then we have got $1.1 billion for contingency. In other words, 35% of the money is for price adjustment as well as contingency. Therefore, we believe that the final amount of money will be within the mark of $31.9 billion. So we are quite confident. As to the sharing of the revenue or the profits, well, this will also be one of the factors taken into account in the assessment of the tender. Now, as to the utilization rate of the Hong Kong Stadium, in the past it was low because of two reasons. First of all, it is natural turf, and so we spent a lot of time on maintenance. We couldn't have it used for a long period of time. After one competition, one match, it has to be maintained for 14 days, and then it hasn't got a roof, so at night we will certainly be exceeding the noise limit, and therefore we're not able to use it at night. Therefore, the utilization rate has been low. But in future, for this one, we are going to have the retractable roof, and we're going to have a most advanced system, so that there won't be natural turf on the ground, and will instead be having the artificial one. Therefore, the utilization rate will be much higher.
Well, we have overrun a little bit, so perhaps members who ask questions should allow time for the officials to respond. Next, Mr. Yu Siwing. Thank you, Chairman. We know that the cruise terminal has been operating for 4 years, and it's not that accessible. The government will also have a tender for a transport hub in Kai Tak that will be a tourist attraction. So the sports park is also online now. It's a large scale, and I see that there is a good transport connection, but when I refer to the cruise terminal and the future transport hub in Kai Tak, so has the government considered a comprehensive transport plan such that in the future Hong Kong's sports, leisure and tourism, we can have some scale effect and synergistic effect? Well, Mr. Yu's question, our CEDD is looking at the Kai Tak development, including transport. We are conducting studies, including an environmental transport network, such that the Kai Tak development area and Kowloon East traffic connection can be improved. Thank you, Chairman. Well, in this plan, do you have an overall strategy? Because we're talking about a large investment, or are you just waiting for other departments to handle it? Chairman, when we started this project, we had maintained contact with other departments. We had done a lot of work on traffic impact assessment. The future transport will rely on the Sha Tin Central MTR connection. We have a Kai Tak Station and Toguawan Station. So when the crowds are dispersed, we'll rely on the Shatin Central Network. Now, other transport infrastructure, we will be working with the CEDD and please continue. The Kai Tak Sports Park, including the cruise terminal, it will be supported by hotels and other facilities. So if the commissioner seems to have not considered a comprehensive strategy, because if you're operating independently, I'm afraid there will be a lack of coordination. We will have something like a cruise terminal being isolated. We don't want to see that occurring because we are investing a substantial amount on this occasion. The southeast connection to the runway is under construction, so the transport network will be improved, and the connection to Toguawan and Kai Tak, we see that there is a D2 connection. Construction will start very soon, so I believe connection to Kai Tak development area and the Kai Tak Sports Park that will be improved. Well, will you participate in the future planning? We have been participating. We have a lot of intra-departmental coordination regarding the Kai Tak Sports Development Area. Under the Home Affairs Bureau, I convene a intra-departmental meeting, and Mr. Yu's question, after the funding is approved in the coming few years, we will coordinate traffic, not just the road network. We'll also look at public transport. Well, do you have a intimate working relationship with the relevant departments? Yes, we are members of the working group. Next, Mr. Kong Zhenyu, Chairman. Paragraph 20. There's a bid incentive, and I have reservations because this is a large interest. There's a short list of 4 candidates and 3 unsuccessful tenderers. They will receive an incentive of 60 million or 50% of the actual cost incurred. And we heard that this has never been arranged before. That is, if they are unsuccessful, they will be given an incentive. But do we have to give them 60 million per tender? And the paper indicates that the government has looked at the market cost, and the cost is between 100 million to 200 million. Well, I've never heard of this before. They're giving money away to a commercial enterprise, and 60 million apiece. And how do we come up with a short list of 4 candidates? Well, if you're successful, then it's a strong enough incentive to attract a lot of tenderers. But how do you shortlist it to 4? And in the final round, the 3 unsuccessful bids, they will receive 60 million apiece. So it's very hard to convince the public. We have set aside 180 million to do this project. So what is this bid incentive about? Secretary, we understand that the bid incentive for unsuccessful tenders, this is something that is not common. So we had a lot of discussion within the government ourselves. This is the first time we've made this arrangement, and given the current policy, we don't see in the public works in the government where we have such an arrangement. As I explained just now, this is a special contract. It's a design, build, and operate contract, and it's a 20-year contract. The risks have been transferred to the private contractor. So our consultant, after contacting a lot of interested market participants, and by the time they submit a tender, they have a concern. First of all, the bid cost is very high, and it's almost the full budget of their whole annual bid cost, or even exceed their annual cost. So a lot of interested potential tenderers, they might be dissuaded from participating because of the high cost. So that would reduce competitiveness, and we might receive we might receive bids that are of a lower quality. So by making this arrangement, we can attract people who are capable because of the incentive. We are now compensating them 50%. They still have to put 50%. They're not making money. Well, I'm afraid this will be a precedent, because I'm not convinced why it should be 60 million. This is not a small amount. It's for an unsuccessful tender. Your paper says it doesn't matter because you get the intellectual property rights. They can use it in another project. Well, you imagine you have 4 designers, 3 unsuccessful. You're taking the design of 3 unsuccessful bids, and you will include it into your final design. Well, it will be a mishmash. So that the reasoning of making it more attractive, I just don't buy that. And how do you decide? How can you prove that the cost is justified? Well, actually, the 60 million or 50%, there is a basis for that. If you look at the past 18 months, when we have operation and construction design, or when we have operation analysis, it would cost us 110 million. So if an outside bidder, if they want to undertake a 20-year design and build cost, they will have to spend as much themselves. So our estimate of 100 million to 200 million is not a rough guess. We also look at the man hours, the number of staff that participate. We have architects, engineers, facility managers. If you count all the professionals, it will be between 100 to 200 million. So 60 million, we feel that if it's less than 50% or less than 60%, it's not enough incentive. So we cannot attract capable and interested tenderers. Mr. Tommy Chung, I'm worried that the unsuccessful tenderers, if they don't have an incentive in the future, for example, we have compost recyclers. I'm afraid that we won't attract quality bids. So anyway, I'm not going to object, but I want to ask the main stadium. I have a feeling that the seating capacity should be 70,000. So should it be 50,000 or 70,000? I feel that 50,000 would be small. If you look at overseas stadiums, even for soccer, they can accommodate 70,000. So would 50,000 be too small, Commissioner, for sport? The question about the main stadium, we've done a lot of research. There are a lot of new stadiums overseas. They have bigger stadiums, and a lot of new stadiums are between 50 to 60,000 seating capacity. So that's a suitable seating arrangement. We also consulted the Hong Kong sports industry, a lot of NSAs, what current events they're organizing, what events they will organize in the future. If we look at their plans, they also feel that 50,000 is a suitable figure. We also consulted the performance, the industry. So if they arrange large-scale events, this is a suitable figure as well. Okay, that's enough. The second thing I want to ask, the track and field 2500 stadium, it's much better than the Wan Chai Stadium, but if we want to host the Asian Games, a 5,000 seating capacity, I don't think that would qualify us to host international events. So what's your view on this, Commissioner? The track and field if we want to host Asian events, 5,000 is suitable. If we want to host more than 5,000 people, it has to be at the Olympic level. Even our Asian Games, we could host that. So a 5,000 seating capacity, it includes a track and field. That's all international standards. Yes, that's an international standard. Well, I want to talk about F&B. So the 3,000 square meters, we feel that's very small for the gourmet area. I don't want you to outsource that. I would like your department to handle it. It would be fair rather than having it given to the private sector. I want to ask about the 50,000 square foot. Are you just going to sell fast food? If we have 5,000 seating and 50,000 seating, there will be restaurants inside. So I'm just worried if you have fast food, it's not enough. It would not satisfy the customers. Well, we have different F&B facilities in the main stadium. We have a lot of VIP rooms. Yes, I know. What about for the public? Can we have? Do we have seating areas where they can have a hot dog? Well, in the indoor stadium, in the ground two ground level floors, we have a shopping mall. We have a lot of F&B. We have a lot of restaurants and even fast food. Well, could you provide the breakdown of floor area and the number of facilities to us? Yes, so we can supplement that information later. Mr. Tommy Chung is very concerned about F&B. Mr. Michael Tien. Thank you, Chairman. Well, what do you think I'm concerned about? In the Disney battle, I understand that we had signed some unequal treaties, and the people who had to inherit the problem, they're stuck in it. And here we have another big project. So I would like you, before we get ourselves mired in the affairs, we don't want to commit the same mistakes, and we don't want to be like the Manchurians, where they signed a whole bunch of unequal treaties, and the subsequent generations would have to inherit these problems. Well, I have to thank the Commissioner for his efforts. In the Home Affairs panel, I mentioned that the tender conditions, we should include the annual minimum income for the government. Commission is not a big problem. They do less, they get less. So I'm very happy that they did their homework. They didn't say take it or leave it. Now, compared to the cruise terminal, that design, build, and operate is divided. The contractor now has a lot of grievances. They talk about the difficulties. So the sports park is now using a DBO. So they have no one to blame if they fail. But the government is footing the bill. You are paying for everything. And if you still can't get provide good results, then you will be disappointing the whole Hong Kong public. Now, you say that we have to assess the construction costs, the ticketing. Well, all these are just too ambiguous. They can design a very good business plan, but they might not operate it very effectively. So it's not tethered tightly. So I want you to consider the 60% of the business plan. Shouldn't you just look at the construction costs and the business plan as well? And 30% of the weighting should be the minimum take. So I would prefer a more comprehensive approach. So if we have similar tenders, how much can they share with the government? And this minimum we should have a floor, minimum floor. I think it should be at least 50% of ticketing. For example, you forecast for 2025, they have a 900 million ticketing. So if the tender says a 50% division of the ticketing, then by the third year, they will have to pay for government 45 million minimum. And half of that would be 22.5 million. So that means the higher the minimum, so the weighting factor gets larger, and it should not be less than 22.5 million every year, because that is the commission level they predicted. They had estimated that there would be 900 million by the third year, so they should the government should be getting 45 million, and we are just asking for half, 22.5 million. So if it's above 22 million, whoever can give a larger share would win the bid. And I also have questions about the term of the contract. 25 plus 10 is not ideal. I would like you to consider 15 plus 10 plus 10. There should be 2 exit opportunities. What is your response, Secretary? Well, regarding the term of the contract, I'll respond to that, and the Commissioner can respond to the other questions. You can keep it brief. Well, the 25 years includes 4 to 5 years of the construction, so the operation year is only 20 years. So if the tenderer has to bear so many risks, and if they only have 15 years operation, I'm afraid that there won't be too many people interested in the market for just a 10-year contract, and they have to invest a large amount of risk in the first few years. So as you can see in the paper, if you adjust for the retail, if there's a drop in 30%, they will be losing money in the first few years. And if they only have 5 years to recover losses, there would only be very few tenderers willing to submit a bid. And if you have a 10-year extension, it's the power rests with us. So I'll have the Commissioner respond very quickly. Chairman, the typical CE civil engineering project 60% is technical and 40% is a cost. But this project, we look at the operators. They have to provide a lot of participation in the design. So we emphasize the technical rating and the quality. So our arrangement is that 60% is on the technical rating and 40% is on the price. So Mr. Michael Tian's idea will be considered seriously.
Mr. Mao Fung Kwok, 4 minutes. Thank you. I think the constituency has been longing for this. It's in the paper. It's hoped that it can be built as soon as possible, and I therefore support this project, and I do support the funding as well. As for the proposed scheme, this is a DBO proposal. A DBO approach. We seldom use this approach. It said that it's large scale and complicated, so on and so forth. I agree that it's big, but it is not complicated. It is complicated only because the administration has adopted this approach. Otherwise, just designing a stadium and building a stadium is not complicated, though it may be very big, and there is a lot of such experience in other parts of the world. In Hong Kong, we don't have this experience, and we might have that many years before somebody tried to operate the Hong Kong Stadium, but it was a failure. This time, it's a big project. I'm quite worried about this DBO approach. The design risk or risks will be borne by the administration as far as possible. The design does include IP. Is there any franchise? Is there any need to pay licensing fee? Say an architect has done a certain stadium before and the design is then brought into Hong Kong. Do we need to share the cost, the previous cost? 60 million times 3 is 180 million. It's not a small sum, and we have to bear this cost. And if the IP cost is put here, then the IP will belong to the SARG, and the winning bidder can use this. Now that is a new IP created, and if the failed bidder reuse the IP, then after can the failed bidder use the IP? Do we need to? Now we pay for that, and then when he makes use of this IP, will he pay us? The Permanent Secretary, the 60 million or 50%, whichever is lower, enables us to use the IP, but it's not exclusive. If we are to buy up the IP, that may not be good for us because we may not be able to make full use of all the IP there. This is a non-exclusive use. Now, if one has obtained the bidder, the successful bidder, will be held responsible. The successful bidder cannot make use of the IP of other people to put it in our stadium. The successful bidder will have to bear the full cost of IP. Say if a successful architect has completed the whole design and is then grafted into this stadium, and then he claims that he has to pay a high IP cost. Now, if he is not successful and then he uses it in other parts of the world, he can still make money off that IP. Is that arrangement? At least we share half of the cost. Do we have the right to obtain some of the money or licensing fee from the IP? Now, there will be three failed proposals, and yet they do contain IP, and then if people make use of that, then we have paid the cost. The good elements of the bidders, they will be incorporated into our design. We are not to buy up the IP so that the IP cannot be used in other projects. That's not our policy objective. That is our policy objective, then it's not 50% of the cost. It may be higher. We just pay an amount that we think that is reasonable in respect of using the IP. Next, Mr. Chow. Thank you, Chairman. This is a large-scale stadium, and it is good for promoting sports in Hong Kong. It will also be very helpful in promoting sports among our young people. I have a question for the administration. According to the government's information, there is the M Plus brand for sports, say for example Rugby 7, which is quite successful. I've also checked some information. The M Plus events, there were 13 in 2014. As for the completion of Kai Tak, will there be more M Plus projects? This is very good brand, and we hope that there can be more such such events. Well, I'm quite familiar with Rugby. Now, the Rugby 7 is quite successful. And we have a good stadium. So for the 15-a-side Rugby, or say Rugby World Cup, there is a World Cup for Rugby. Of course, is not comparable to a World Cup football. But there is a certain degree of support in the world. Now with the Kai Tak Sports Park, can we also introduce such mega events, such as 15-a-side Rugby? And there are different programs to promote sports among students. You have the sports in campus and so on and so forth. with the completion of the sports park, is there any plan to encourage students who learn from retired sportswomen to make use of the facilities in the sports park to do more such sports activities? As for the MARC programs, there are about 13 or 14. In fact, apart from Rugby 7, we do have international competitions, say in badminton, table tennis, so on and so forth, with modern arenas. Different NSAs will have programs, and they will raise their programs, level of programs. Say there is a world tournament of badminton, and they hope that can be staged in Kai Tak Sports Park because there is a 10,000 seat arena. Say, for example, the Thomas Cup, the Hubert Cup, can be staged in Hong Kong. As for rugby, the Rugby Federation does have a plan for 15-a-side programs, and 1 or 2 matches were staged in Hong Kong Stadium in the past. But if we have a bigger arena, then the Federation does want to have more 15-a-side matches. One of the 3 objectives is popularization of sports, and students are targets, important targets. We will arrange more activities for students. In fact, the outdoor stadium is for the students, and also there will be a lot of events and activities for students using the indoor stadium. Mr. Law. Local matches are not able to stage in the Hong Kong Stadium because cost is too high. According to the government's projection, I really don't know how they work out the sums. $277 million, I divide the number by 30 days, there will be about 30 events. The cost will be about $9 million per event. That's very costly, isn't it? And there is also the turf, and also the turf for activities, and also the retractable roof. The cost will be even higher than the Hong Kong Stadium. It's even more unreachable for local sports. For example, the Premier League for the Hong Kong football. It will be too costly for them. Can the Bureau explain the 5 local events that can be staged into in the sports park, and how can that be more accessible than the Hong Kong Stadium in terms of cost? It's not scientific just to divide the number. The projected income includes several things: 33% from the hiring cost of the main arena, and then 29 for VIP boxes, and there is also sponsorship and also catering income. So you can't just divide the number by 30. The Commissioner will speak on the sports and non-sports events in the main arena. Now, overseas stadium, just like such as the Wembley, are examples. We expect the main stadium will have activities for 30 days. I am asking for sports events. I think the rent will be higher than the Hong Kong Stadium, yet there can be local events staged in the Hong Kong Stadium, in this stadium. As for the cost, the hiring cost, it will be decided by the operator. Since it is a self-financing project, the hiring fees will be decided by the operator, but the level should be attractive to the NSAs, otherwise there will be no, because they are the users. The main source of income does not come from hiring charges. They can't do. The main incomes are advertisements and also catering. It's hard to say that the hiring cost will not be higher than the Hong Kong Stadium. The operating cost of this stadium is very high, and it's doubtful whether really that the hiring charge will be lower than that of Hong Kong Stadium. But I put this question aside first. Now you assume that the Hong Kong Stadium will not compete directly with Hong Kong Sports Park for events. Now with the opening of the Hong Kong Sports Park, you assume that the Hong Kong Stadium has been redeveloped, and then the Wan Chai Stadium will have been demolished. Is it the case? We expect that at least there will be 30, or rather 10 football matches, and they have to consider this. As for the Hong Kong Stadium, in the coming few years, we'll conduct a technical study. We hope that with the completion of the Kai Tak Sports Park, there will be the redevelopment of Hong Kong Stadium. What about the Wan Chai Sports Ground? The government has commissioned the Trade Development Council to conduct a study. You assume that there is no direct competition because you think, or it is implied, that that is the demolition of the Wan Chai Sports Ground. Well, I refer to the Hong Kong Stadium, not the Wan Chai. Mr. Leung Chi-chung. Well, I'm glad to see that the sports park has gone so far to this stage, but I'm worried that there's a new procurement approach. I'm worried about this new procurement approach. It will affect the accessibility of the public to using this arena. Now the commissioner has been to different parts of the world and has clocked up a lot of mileage to check on other sports arenas in other parts of the world. I believe he's learned lessons. I just want to ask him the following questions. I believe there is no similar operations in Hong Kong, but they have been very successful, say in the mainland. It will become, and also in other parts of in foreign countries, and they even make a stadium their own kingdom. Now we don't have such local experience, so it will be the foreign operators or the mainland operators. Now we have a small population, 7 million, and we have to rely on visitors to make this stadium financially viable. Will there be any subsidy in order to encourage local people to use the stadium? Now, you will be refunded if you're successful in making the bid. Instead of you refund the failed bidder, it seems that you're begging people to put in their bids. Otherwise, no one will be bidding. After all, there will only be 2 or 3, maybe some coming from the mainland, from the UK, from France, or from the US. Paying the bidder is not the main incentive. I think winning the bid is the main incentive, isn't it? Our estimate is a lot of professional experience, and a wide range of professional experience is required. Say, for example, for catering and management, that's available locally. But the design of a stadium or the management of stadium may have to rely on overseas experience. Each bidder is a consortium, is a team. They have foreign experience. They also have local experience. It cannot be entirely relying on overseas experience. A group unknown or a group unfamiliar with local experience cannot be successful. I believe local companies will form a team with overseas companies to make the bid. Now, in the contract and also in the bidding documents, we will spell it out very clearly that the fees on sporting events should be comparable to the fees and charges of the LCSD venues. This will be put into the contract so that it will protect the rights of local people using the facilities. Next, Dr. Lau Xiaolai. 4 minutes. Well, just having a big arena will not necessarily attract international events. If you look at the Hong Kong Stadium, as far as international events, apart from the English Premium League events, in 2013, there hadn't been any full house in the Hong Kong Stadium. So in the future, to ensure income, they may just organize more pop concerts rather than sports events. How can you make sure that they're not going to organize just pop concerts? Are we going to sacrifice local sports events for international events? Local people or local teams prefer the Mongkok Stadium instead of the Hong Kong Stadium because the hire charges are lower and people can come closer. Now, after demolishing of Wan Chai, local events will have nowhere to go, and the events and the sports arena, sports center is not suitable for them. And there are also athletes complaining against the demolition of Wan Chai. It is very inconvenient. With the demolition of Wan Chai, there is a time gap. Where will the athletes be trained? And without training, what will be the future of the athletic team in Hong Kong? Should we sacrifice local athletes for the purpose of building this sports arena? And I've asked a similar question before. Why is a 25-year DBO contract for the same contractor? There may be technical difficulties, I presume, but what about 15 plus 10 years, or 10 plus 15 years? Say in the first few years, you can give that will be for construction, so you can give a 15-year contract. And then afterwards, there can be a review after 15 years, and you can be more lenient in terms of the first contract, and then there can be a review on a 10-year basis.
I think this is a more responsible way to go about it, rather than being so relaxed and then allowing the operator a chance to be slacking its management. Commissioner, well, in relation to the attraction of the Kai Tak Sports Park to international event organizers, well, in fact, we frequently received inquiries from international event organizers saying that they are interested in hosting events like soccer matches or rugby matches. With the new facility, we believe that more events can come to Hong Kong. Of course, we won't be emphasizing international events at the expense of local events. Well, in fact, other than the 5,000-seater indoor sports center, or rather the outdoor venue, we are going to retrofit Hong Kong Stadium as well as the Wan Chai Sports Ground which can provide better service to the local events. Now, for the period of 25 years, we hope that the operator will be able to establish a brand name for the events, and then it will be better for them to come up with a commercial assessment as to their business plan, so that there will be more certainty. In this way, more interest will be expressed for this project. Second question hasn't been answered. I think the same question has been asked by other members and an answer has been given. No, but what about the athletes? Yes, Commissioner. For Wan Chai Sports Ground, as I have said, currently the Hong Kong TDC will be studying the matter, and then we'll decide on the way forward as to whether it is right to assume that there will be a vacuum period. Well, I think we need to look at what's going to happen. What about the other question, Mrs. Fong? Well, if we talk about 15 years, now the proposal is 15 years, but then if you set aside 5 years, then that means 10 years left for the operation. If you look at the operational estimates for the first 5 years, if the actual revenue turns out to be 30% lower than our base case estimate, then there will be a deficit. Now, the operator has to make investments. If there is only a period of 5 years for them to recover the cost, there will be little interest. For the sports city in Singapore, again, they have a period of 25 years in the tender. So we believe that 25 years will provide a greater degree of certainty. Well, please set aside more time for officials to give a reply. If you've got many questions, you may want to ask your questions in the second round. Jeremy Tam, first round, 4 minutes. Thank you, Chair. Now we are getting the DBO approach. I've looked up the previous information. In 2009, there was a project under the EPD for the purpose of dealing with sewerage, and then the period was for 15 years, and then later on there was a project concerning the island waste refuse collection or refuse transfer facility running for 15 years. So we've got 2 examples, and therefore for 25 years it will be a much longer period than the previous contractual periods. You may say that it takes 5 years to construct the facility, there will be 20 years left. Well, I think you can include this condition in the contract. Say if we reduce it to 20, and then if we can include the following term, that is, if a certain indicator or benchmark can be reached in the preceding 20 years, then there will be guaranteed renewal for another 10 years. I think it will be to the advantage of the tenderer. Now, if it is incurring deficits all the time, it means that the tenderer or the operator can leave earlier. So the successful bidder will certainly do the calculations. So why don't you cut it shorter for the initial period, and then for renewal it will be sort of automatic unless its performance has been really bad. Yes, in fact, we are providing incentive. There is renewal for 10 years upon good performance. I think this is echoing Mr. Jeremy Tam's proposal. If we are to cut short the initial period, well, experience tells us that 25 years will not entirely be very attractive. Now, as to Mr. Tam's referral to sewage and refuse handling facilities, I think the case is different. According to understanding, the EPD has this model. That is, the operator doesn't have to be self-financing. Upon completion of the construction, the operator will charge the government for operating the facility. In our case, it is self-financing and it has to share the revenue with the administration. We want this to happen because we want to have vitality. We want to promote sports development. Now, what I want to say is that if the operation or if the management is bad, then it's still wait for the administration to intervene. Say, for example, in terms of hiring, because the members have said that the operator may be too profit-minded, and they may want to develop the retail and dining. They want to have more entertainment events rather than sports events. So I want to know whether it is possible for them to make use of the loopholes. I want to know whether you have a way to intervene. Are you going to have a say in relation to membership of the board? Well, we submitted a paper to the Home Affairs panel of the LegCo. Well, upon completion of the construction, there will be a new governance structure. The HAB and the operator will set up a committee or committees at various levels. There will be regular meetings to examine the performance, the events calendar, as well as the fees and charges. Therefore, we do have a say. If it is lopsided, we can invoke the contractual terms to ask for a better balance. In fact, you can refer to that paper to the HAP for the governance structure. Mr. Oh, 4 minutes. In relation to this project, we are going to have 28 hectares for the public open space. All the time, the public have been criticizing the fact that it's been lying idle for a long time. So we believe that the administration must commence the project ASAP. And I hope the administration will learn a lesson from the failure of the cruise terminal. It's attracted a lot of criticism. Well, for the cruise terminal, well, I'm afraid it hasn't played a complementary role in relation to Kai-Tak development. Now I come to my questions. Now you're going to have a one-stop service, so to speak, that is to have the DBO approach. I want to know about the role of the government. And what about future monitoring and operation? What is the role to be played by the administration? Second question, and that's about the project as a whole. I want to know how the Kai-Tak Sports Park can be coordinated with the existing sports facilities. Now, for Kowloon East, according to the Hong Kong standards, planning standards and guidelines, there is still a shortfall of sports facilities. Third question, for the community at large and for the LegCo, I think we are all concerned about the traffic arrangements. Now, the Commissioner has told us that he has got some alternative views. What is important is to make sure that the Kai-Tak Sports Park will help Kwun Tong, Wong Tai Sin, and Kowloon City in terms of transport and traffic. If you can't send people efficiently via mass transport systems to the sports park, it will be a useless park. So please give a reply. And later on, I have more questions to ask. Mrs. Fong, first of all, let me elaborate on the monitoring system. Well, the project is a public works project owned by the government. The land, the facilities upon completion will be owned by the government, and the power lies with the government. We're going to have a contract to manage all the facilities in the sports park. There will be a committee. That is, we have the Joint Monitoring Committee as mentioned in the paper. In other words, the CEO at the top of its organizational chart will be sitting on the committee and will be regularly reviewing the performance of the sports park. In other words, we want to know whether the benchmarks or the indicators have been met. If not, we will seek remedial action. If they don't hit our advice, there will certainly be penalties to be imposed, financial penalties or penalties of other natures. That will be included in our contract. If things are so bad that they cannot meet our requirements and a far cry from our requirements, there is in fact a termination clause in the contract like all other contracts. In other words, For the hardware of the sports park as well as the operation of the sports park, the HAB does play a very significant role. And then for that top-level committee, we also oversee facility management, opening up the facilities to the public, and we have got mega events. Again, there will be joint meetings for both the HAB as well as the operator. I would like to defer to the Commissioner for other questions. Now, for the facilities in Kai Tak, like the main stadium, sports ground, indoor sports center, etc. On non-event days, they will be open to the public, so we can meet the demand of the public for the use of sports facilities. Dr. N. Jiang, thank you, Chair. Well, Hong Kong is a cosmopolitan city. We do need a major sports facility with a spectator capacity of several tens of thousands, so that we can host international sports events. Therefore, I support the project. I hope it will be commenced soon. However, for the approach to be adopted, it is indeed worrying. There are a few comments that I want to say. Now, we are going to spend $30 billion to build the facility. And then for the bidders, yes, it may take them tens of thousands, tens of millions of dollars to do it. Again, the government will pick up the bill. So I want to know about the risk to be borne by the tenderers. Permanent Secretary, for this procurement approach, our operational consultant has examined almost 10 different models so as to achieve our objective. On the one hand, sports promotion. On the other hand, we want it to be sort of self-financing, and we hope that some profits can be attained so that we can support sustainable operation. In the end of the day, we found that the DBO approach will best meet our objectives, and there are a few of them. Now, for the DBO, for the operational side to be added to the design and building elements, we have chosen this approach after learning from the experience of overseas facilities. Now, sometimes if the operator is not part of the design and building team, the operator may find that many facilities are not suitable, and then the governments involved would have to demolish and rebuild certain facilities. We don't want this to happen. Sorry, I just hope that the PS can answer this question. Can she foresee at this moment the risk of the tenderer? So please elaborate on the risk. The risk. First of all, the tenderer has to pay for the bidding document, $100 to $200 million, and then the tenderer has to put in the bid, and that's why we've come up with the bid incentive. And then for the 25-year period, as you can see from our paper, the two major sources of revenue are retail and dining, and then major events at the main stadium. If, as a result of the economic factors, there is a 30% reduction vis-a-vis the projected revenue, there will be a deficit. The government is not going to give a subsidy. If it is bound to give rise to a deficit, why would they be interested in putting in a bid? It is a scenario that we're projected. If we can achieve the base case with relative certainty, then there will be stability in the first 5 years, and then they can make a profit. Therefore, we have given you the worst scenario. Chair and Jiang, for this land, we have hoped that there will be a profit, but it hasn't. Now, time is limited. I just want to make this proposal. Now, there will be a bid incentive for the unsuccessful tenderers. This is unprecedented, but still it doesn't matter. I just hope that the government would abandon the idea of sharing the revenue. Whenever we try to do this, we can't get anything out of it. Why don't you have an underwriting arrangement for the hotel development, retail and dining? Now, the 300-room hotel will also be operated by the tenderer. So don't mind whether they're making a profit or a loss. Just try to make some arrangements about underwriting. Now, for the sports facilities, I think you should be more relaxed. Now, you're saying that all the facilities are public facilities. If they are suffering from a loss, I'm afraid that they would just increase the fees drastically. Therefore, I think we can try to adjust the amount of underwriting or subsidies that can be included into the contract. Yes, I think similar ideas have been voiced by other members, so please consider it. Ray Chen, first round, 4 minutes. Dr. N. Jen is really a businesswoman, so she is clear-minded. I think it's better for us to be clear about this. That is, we shouldn't allow the public to harbor illusions that we can share the profits. Now, I would like to talk about the estimated project cost. It is $31.898 billion in money of the day prices. In the past, another figure has been given to us, $25 billion in terms of 2016 prices. We can make a comparison. Of course, the administration will say that the cost hasn't gone up because in 2016, with cost management, it would be $23.8 billion. That is, the cost has been lowered. So now we are getting $31 billion in money of the day prices. I want to know whether it has been built on the basis of $23.8 billion after adjusting, making adjustments about inflation. Now we have got this lump sum. We don't know about the breakdown concerning the cost of different venues. Like, what about the construction cost of the main stadium? Or are you going to have a lump sum for the tenderer so that the tenderer can make a decision as to whether you have a luxurious main stadium while it should be indoor sports center, for example? So for the main stadium, it can be used for entertainment events like concert. Now, for the Hong Kong Coliseum, we know how much we are charged for the use of the venue. Do you have an idea today? Maybe you'll say that it will be decided by the market forces. I really want to know how much a ticket will cost for a concert. I dare not try to think about it. Now, for retail and dining, you have said that that's the main source of income. If there isn't anyone going to the event, then how can you attract any customers for the retail and dining?
Regarding the costs, in 2015, the figure we provided was the cost in September 2014, so it was $25 billion. It was a rough cost. Nothing was done. There was no preliminary work. It was just an initial estimate. If you use the 2014 September figure and you inflate it and use September 2016 money of the day, it's $27.5 billion. If you use the figure for September 2016, that is Annex 6. That is the information that Mr. Chan asked for. The main stadium is $8.8 billion. The public stadium is about $1 billion, and you can see the rest of the figures. So overall speaking, compared to 2015, if you use the September 2016 figure, we are cheaper. It's $23.8 billion. So the $8 billion top-up is, as I said, the price adjustment. We set aside 25% for price adjustment. So that is just a clarification. Now, regarding the main stadium ticketing, in Hong Kong Stadium, tickets, there's a fixed price. When they rent the stadium, they pay a fixed sum, and then in the ticketing income, we have a 20% commission. In the future Kai Tak Sports Bar, it's similar to the LCSD arrangement. So we will charge a fixed sum, and then we will have 15 to 20% share in the ticketing. Okay, Mr. Tan Ji-chun, can I ask the second round? Mr. Leung Go-hong. Chairman, if the pro-establishment were sincere, they should actually go through the document. It seems that there are a lot of comments. If you look at Mr. Chung had a radio interview, so the staff and employee are not communicating. Each side doesn't understand what the other side is asking for. They say, "Have you heard my request?" If you are more vociferous in your demands, they will hear you. So this 31.8 billion is not a small sum. I will be objecting to that. I thought I was the only one objecting, but now when you air discussions, we have people saying that the ticketing arrangements are ridiculous, and we have a design, build, and operation, and then they make an income in operation, and there's a division of income, and then the government has to pay for the IP and the bid incentives, but then this could be used elsewhere. Given my limited capacity, and you raise all these questions, I would have to consider it for a week. And now you're saying that if you don't approve the funding, the workers won't have work. Well, all the pro-establishment camp have reasonable comments. It's not just me. I think it's a waste of money, so that's why I object, especially for the 50,000 seat stadium. I'm out of breath in my objections. I will be filibustering. We should withdraw and have negotiations again. And this is what they do on each occasion. It's the same with MPF. There is the relevant stakeholders do not agree with your proposals, and you say you could take it or leave it. That's the catchphrase now. So now we've heard your comments. They don't want MPF, and if both sides can't agree, we'll just leave it then. So how are you going to govern Hong Kong? Well, yesterday I saw a lady on TV. They made a mess of West Kowloon. So the people who voted for that project should commit suicide. I've never seen any government operate like that. You tell them, you reprimand them, you plead with them. They won't take it on board. They will bulldoze through it, and that's what they're doing today. They're seeking a funding for 31.8 billion. So last Saturday, and even if we can't vote today, if we even if we are able to postpone it, they'll still get the funding of 31.8 billion. I'm not the one who finds that this is problematic. It's the people that you're consulting, whether it's the EXCO or political parties with EXCO members. They are objecting, and you want to bulldoze through it. The MPF is a great example. We have a staff side, a labor side. You can see very clearly. And here we don't have anybody representing taxpayers. We don't have people representing Kowloon East. Chairman, even though I'm digressing, I would like them to reconsider. It's an insult if it was approved. It's okay, time's up. Just now we heard from the pro-establishment camp, and we could do without the meeting. They don't answer your questions, and you reprimand them, they don't respond. So you have no further questions, Mr. Leung. Go home. Next. You don't have questions, and time's up, and we have Mr. Wu Ji-wai. 4 minutes. I want to clarify some basic information. Just now the secretary said that the government considered 10 options. Could you provide the 10 options for our reference, so we can see what was the government's thinking when they decided to take the DBO approach? The stadium maintenance and repair, does it include depreciation, and that will be paid by the government? I want to clarify that. In other words, the division of income, after they deduct actual expenses, there will be a division of the of revenue, or do we is it the commission based on total revenue? Well, just now the information that Mr. Wu asked for, or the different procurement options, that we can provide that. Regarding the government's expenditure, in the paper we mention if it involves operation of the sports park and investment, I'd say they need to build F&B facilities. The contractor will have to invest in that. We are responsible for the long-term, the life cycle maintenance cost. That is, every 20 years there's large maintenance. It's a government property, so the government. What about depreciation? Depreciation of facilities. I'll defer to my colleague, Ms. Law. I hope I understood the question correctly. There's a division of the gross income, so we don't consider the expenditure, whether it's the depreciation. It's not a cash expenditure. It's just an accounting arrangement. We don't consider that. That is their problem. We are just dividing the gross income, whether it's rent or VIP rooms or retail, and this is what will be considered in the tender submission. I want to clarify. We're talking about 30 billion, so the government has to rely on income to offset maintenance costs. Is that correct? In our tender process, we never considered recovering all the capex costs, but capex, it's 31.9 billion. If you want to transfer it all into the total income, it would be very hard, and it is not our policy objective. So DBO is just for construction, and in the future it's the operation costs. Capex is money spent. Well, they also have capex, capital expenditure, as we also have a non-operating expense. There are some capex items, a business facility. I understand. The government will pay for the hardware and future maintenance and other life cycle maintenance. That will be paid for the government. In paragraph 18, the non-design elements, they will seek funding in LegCo, and that's stated in paragraph 18. It says, in the event of a capital cost overrun and the exceedance is not attributable to the contractor, further approval might need to be sought. So could you clarify, when will that occur? Page 9. So this is the principle of typical public works projects. The government, if there are any changes after the tender is submitted, if it involves new fees, this change will If it's not mentioned by the contractor, it's the government VO, and if it exceeds the LegCo approved amount, the government would need to make another funding request. That is a typical arrangement. Why do we have VOs after the DBO? Well, if there are any changes, if it's not the responsibility of the tender winner, so the XSO will say they have to seek funding. It's an insurance button. I don't think we'll need to implement that. So the DBO will include all the building expenses. We won't have a lot of VO because we have a very detailed design. Mr. Alvin Young, thank you, Chairman. Just now, hotels were mentioned. I'd like to clarify. The hotel does not come within the ambit of this project. In the paper submitted, the hotel and office portfolio is removed. In the future, we will sell land. I want to follow up on the hotels. In the height restriction, will it be relaxed? Because that affects operations and whether it can be attractive. I just want to clarify that. We just received approval from Town Planning Board Commissioner. At the beginning of the year, Town Planning Board had approved for a hotel in the Kai-Tak Sports Park, and the height restriction is in line with the planning, so we don't have any plans to increase the height restriction. Do you have the 55 MPD? The main stadium height restriction has been increased to 75 MPD. The rest are at 55 MPD. So the hotel is shorter than the main stadium. And on another topic, I'd like to ask about retail and F&B. In the government's paper, when it was submitted to LegCo, there was 31,500 square meters, and it has increased to today's. In February, it was 60,000, and now it's 67,000 square meters. So I'd like to understand your line of reasoning. Well, put simply, in 2012, it mentioned 31,000 square meters. That was a NOFA, and if you convert that to GFA, it's 57,000 square meters. So if you include the 3,000 square meters dining cove, that is 60,000 square meters. So we added 3,000 dining cove along the promenade. It's in line with the Harbourfront Commission's request. So there has been no change. So that has always been the design area. Yes, I confirm that. Another topic, I'd like to follow up on paragraph 11. It says that meeting the needs of the entertainment industry, ultimately, aside from hosting sports events, they will also have other large-scale community events and entertainment events. So large-scale community events, what do you mean, and what kind of events will the operator have to approve, and what are your arrangements? Well, regarding each stadium, especially the main stadium, in the contract we will require that there will be 7 days per year of free use for the government. Will allow NGOs and non-profit organizations to host large events. We can have marches or religious bodies, large events, so we can consider that. regarding the 7-day free use for the government, that means when the bodies make an application, they will make it to the government or the operator. Well, the 7 free days, they can apply to the government and will be nominated by Home Affairs Bureau. And as the Commissioner said, there will be 16 days of sports events. There will be 10 days for soccer, and they can apply directly to the operator. The fees will be similar to Hong Kong Stadium level. Next, Mr. Kong Zhen-yu, 3 minutes. Well, I'm still worried, first of all, that it's an expensive project, and after completion, the DBO model, what will happen? Will we have sufficient audience levels? Will be another cruise terminal? If you look at international comparisons, we can compare to Singapore. Their cost was about 8 billion Hong Kong dollars, 35 hectares, and they have a 55,000 seating capacity. They had a retractable roof and a swimming, a water sports. It's a quite large price difference. Our cost is 31 billion, and we don't know if it will overrun. Last June, we had they had provided some opinion on the Kai Tak Sports Park. They said that in 2014, the Kai Tak Sports had an estimate of 25 billion, and under the cost control, they could still save 2 billion. So I'd like to ask the government, 31.8 billion, is it getting out of hand? Is there no room for savings? And I said that even for the unsuccessful tenders, they will get 60 million, and 3 of them will add up to 180 million. Can we save money there, Commissioner? Well, just now, Mr. Kwong referred to the Singapore Stadium. It was completed in 2014, and of course, the construction costs, you cannot compare directly. So, in 2014 prices, if you convert that to 2016, it's 11.5 billion. It's not 8 billion. You cannot compare directly to Hong Kong construction costs. And secondly, under the Development Bureau, they have the cost control committee, and they had looked into this on many occasions. And in 2016, September, it was the cost was 23.8, and after the price adjustment in MOD, it's 31.9 billion. And if you look at the 23.8 compared to a year ago, it has been less. And what have we reduced? The hotel and office space facilities had been removed from the Kai Tak Sports Park.
The underground car park's design has been changed, and we put the car park on the ground, and we reduce the platform, so the estimated construction cost will be lower. Next one, Mr. Ma Fung Kwok, your second round, 3 minutes. Thank you, Chairman. On IP, a question which I have asked before, I want to make this point. I support remunerating those who put in the bids, but the administration should only pay them if they apply, and you can impose a condition on them. If they are to use the IP, they have to seek the agreement of the SARG. We may, therefore, can recover some of the costs. I hope the administration will consider this. My second point is this. According to the paper, the market is of the view that it's very costly to put in a bid. But in fact, the risk is very low. They don't need to bear construction costs, and they also receive remuneration from the government. The only risk is in terms of operation. Is there any requirement in the bidding process, should there be any financial guarantee? Do they need to pay a bond? And when will the money be paid? As for the hotel and office, they have been segregated from this project. Now, when the office are to be used by the NSAs, if the administration is going to adopt a bidding approach, how can the, say, NSAs or sports-related offices or sports-related users can afford such high rents? Chairman, concerning the bidding incentive, the bidder has to apply, and evidence that satisfied us have to be provided. We have to check the bills before we release the money. The bid is a conforming bid. It has to fulfill all our requirements. And they have to tell us beforehand what is the distribution roughly. Say in the bid, what sort of money is put into what part of the proposal. As for IP, we will consider seriously what more we can do in terms of IP to protect the government's interests. As for the office, we hope that some of the floor space of the future office can be used by the NSAs. We will talk to the Development Bureau to reflect this requirement in the lease conditions or land sale conditions. All right, time is used up. Mr. Tam, Mr. Jeremy Tam, second round, 3 minutes. Thank you, Chairman. I met with the administration and raised one point before concerning the design, the greening, or the neighborhood garden. I asked whether dogs will be allowed to use the neighborhood park or neighborhood garden. The answer is the affirmative. I just want to confirm this. Yes, the Commissioner. Chairman. Now, the venue will be operated by the operator, and we know that there are many pet lovers in Hong Kong, and within the park there will be within the 8 hectares of land there will be adequate space reserved for pets. My question is not just a specific place for pets. I'm talking about the so-called neighborhood park, which is on the eastern side of the arena, the green area, the greeneries. You may just give 300 square feet for the pets. I'm referring to non-barrier, rather barrier-free access for pets. Whereas for which part and whether it's the whole park, I think we have to wait for the bidders. Well, the bidders don't want the pets to go in. From the management point of view, they don't want to see more dogs. That will be costly for them to manage the place. So if you leave them to their own device, then they will just earmark, say, 500 square feet for that. Well, we've talked to the district councils concerned. When we earmark public space for the access of pets, we have to consult the relevant district councils. We will consult the district councils. Well, I think that's different. Last time when we talked to you, you said that you would do it, but now you turn, put the burden on the district council. You better consult the whole project with the district council and come back again. Oh, you will not do that, of course. There should be a system, and there should be a policy. Yes, the policy is that we will. But as you ask which part, I cannot answer you whether it is a specific area or the whole park. Now you will consult the district council, right? When will you consult the district council? In your tendering document, will there be specific requirements? Next time, can you tell us, give us supplementary information in respect of the tendering requirement in respect of the accessibility of pets to the area? Yes, when we have finalized that part of tendering document, we will inform you. But can you give us we're just drafting the tendering document. Can you give us a paper or a written answer? I know that you're drafting the tendering documents. I think you have something in mind. I hope you can provide the member with with some specific information. Next, Mr. Wu Chi-wai, your second round, 3 minutes. Thank you, Chairman. Well, the operator will have to pay for the daily expenses. With regard to mega sports events and entertainment events, are there specifications in terms of these two types of events, and how much can the operator maneuver? Concerning the main stadium, will the events be mixed with all the events in the multi-sports complex for the calculation? Now the operation is for the whole sports park, including the multi-use sports complex. When you calculate the proportion, do you just count the main stadium, the events, the mega events in the main stadium? When you count the entertainment and and sports mega events. Now, concerning the terms, for the indoor sports center, only 1/3 is allowed. No more than 1/3 is allowed for non-sports events. As for the main stadium, since it is a 50,000 seat stadium, 10 days will be for football, 6 to 7 other sports events. And then for the remaining of the 30 days, for the remaining, they can use it for revenue generating entertainment events. Now, they do not operate the hotel and offices. The operating income, therefore, comes from the 57,000 square meter commercial floor space, and also the revenue from the sports stadium. And the remaining we charge similar to the level of LCSD's venues, right? If it is an indoor sports center, then the fees in charge will be similar to the LCSD. But like the Coliseum, the charge will be similar. The entertainment events, the charge will be similar to that of the Coliseum. Say if the operator folds up, then will the administration take over and bear all the costs? Well, concerning the bond, now during the term of the contract, say if the consortium fails, then we will take the bond, and the bond will have to pay put with us, and then we will retender to get another operator to manage the sports park. How long does it take for retendering? Will the bond be able to cover that? Usually, that will take 6 to 9 months. So the bond will be about 6 to 9 months of operating expenses. Yes, roughly that. Mr. Raymond Chan, your second round, 3 minutes. My concern is about the 50,000 seat main stadium. Is there such a need, and can that be put to good use? This is a major chunk, $88.8 billion of the cost. Now, it is said that because Hong Kong lack large stadium, international singers just select to organize their concerts in neighboring cities. The assumption is that if we have the venue, then we can compete with others for international stars to host concerts. I just want to ask the administration, how many international pop singers have had concerts in nearby cities? They had their concerts in Taiwan, in the mainland, simply because we don't have this big venue. Can you give me the number? With regard to a 50,000 seat stadium, 6 to 7 days of sports events, 10 days for football matches, I cannot see how many such sports events will take up 50,000 seats. It may be okay for the Rugby 7 and also internationally renowned football teams. But what about what about other possibilities? Are there any other possibilities? Do you accept, say, an event just with 20,000 audience or 20,000 spectators? So 50,000 seats are not necessary at all. Now for the WKCD, we said that there would be a large-scale performance venue, and then it was now taken over by the Imperial Palace Museum. Now, when you did the study, you didn't know that the large-scale performance venue would be replaced by the Imperial Palace Museum. Now, this may have a better business viability because of that. Is it the case? Mr. Chen is right in saying that we don't require the event to be filled all the time with 50,000 spectators. Now, in fact, some are asking for 50,000 seating capacity because of the size of the spectators. And the Hong Kong Stadium is not big enough. And according to our understanding, in the past years, there are international stars who want to have their concerts in Hong Kong, but the Hong Kong Stadium cannot be used for a stadium. You really cannot have any noisy activities after 7 p.m. So they don't just come to Hong Kong. They do not apply. They couldn't care to apply. So I cannot give you a number. But can you show us how many have organized their pop concerts in nearby cities so that we know the possibilities? Say if you say there are dozens of such stars, well, every year there are concerts which require a seating of 30,000 capacity. They have staged concerts in Macau, in Singapore. Mr. Chen Chichun, the third round, maybe. Mr. Lam, Mr. Jeffrey Lam, your first round. 4 minutes. Hong Kong is an international financial center, and we should keep pace with the development of society. Financial policies, financial infrastructure should be improved from time to time, and we need offices, we need the national schools, we also need sports and entertainment and recreation facilities. And we also prefer pluralism in society. From time to time, there are international football matches in Hong Kong, but our facilities are very limited, and we also suffer from bad weather, and also the number of constraints on number of spectators. We see internationally renowned football teams visiting other cities first-line cities in the mainland, second-line cities in mainland, also other cities, other neighboring cities such as Singapore. Now with the sports park, will they consider Hong Kong? I believe they will. Yes, we have to make the first step. As pop concerts, I've heard that many complain that Hong Kong do not have a big arena for pop concerts, and therefore they've chosen the mainland and other Asian cities for their pop concerts. When the Hong Kong Stadium was first launched, nearly once in a week or once in a month, there was a pop concert, but because of noise, there has been no more pop concerts in the Hong Kong Stadium. But if we have a all-weather arena in Kai Tak, then singers will be attracted. Singers and other performers will be attracted to stage their performances in the main stadium in Kai Tak. And Hong Kong Stadium had a seating of 40,000, and it was a full house when there was a concert. I think there's a need for the main arena, and different sectors of the community believe that a multi-purpose, all-weather stadium is necessary and is needed, and it's good for the development of sports in Hong Kong. There are facilities near the main stadium. There is a smaller stadium nearby. And what about transportation facilities? I know that you have considered that. Is the public transport system able to cope with large-scale events? People have to gain access to the stadium. And also, there is a concern of terrorist attacks. So we need to consider the safety and security aspect as well. Have you considered that, the Commissioner? In particular, safety and security. Concerning transportation, for the dispersion of crowds, it will be dependent on the SCL. It's estimated to be put into operation in 2019 and then 2021 across the harbour. And then the stadium will be completed in 2022 to 2023. About 80% will make use of the SCL, Sharian Central Line, to access the airport. And there are buses and public light buses. There is a public transport interchange nearby. We've conducted a detailed TIA. As for security, we have worked with the police to conduct a security assessment. There are security features in the design.
So, Dr. Edward Yu, first round. First of all, I hope members would understand that I've been studying DBO, BOT for many years in relation to the joint efforts of consortiums. For the DBO mentioned in your paper, I have to point out that it is not aligned with the internationally acknowledged DBO. Generally speaking, if you want to award design, building, and operation to a single operator, like in this case, you are giving it 25 years to the operator. The revenue from the sports venues, from the retail and dining facilities will be given to the operator. Generally speaking, we will ask the operator to subsidize the construction costs in the advanced stage, rather than having the government pay for the construction and maintenance. and only ask for the sharing of gross income. This is quite uncommon, and this is not in line with the international practice. Therefore, if we follow your approach, there will be many loopholes. First of all, the operator has no economic incentive to cut down on construction costs. On the contrary, there is an incentive to exaggerate the construction costs so as to make a profit out of the construction. Now, $31 billion, 30% of that would mean that there will be $10 billion in terms of net profits, and then the administration will be responsible for maintenance and repair, so there's no economic incentive to maintain it properly. On the contrary, there is an incentive to damage it, to break it. In other words, the administration is running a huge risk. My question is, you are not aware of the design. How can you give a figure of $31.9 billion for the BDO? I'm afraid the tenderer would come back to cite a higher price, and you need to come back for more money. So you need to justify why you are asking for $31.9 billion. Are you going to cap the cost at this level? And how about the lack of economic incentives, or rather the motivation to boost the construction costs? And then under such an arrangement of BDO, how can you assure that the money spent by the administration at the front end will not result in the operator being slack? Now, the operator may get the profits at the upfront. You said that starting from 2022 there will be a profit, but in fact we're talking about $300 million a year. So even if they become very slack, they do nothing, they will suffer a loss of $6 billion, while they will make a substantial gain at the upfront. How can you plug such a loophole? Commissioner, in 2015, we came here to ask for money to prepare for the advanced works. I have consultants carrying out different aspects of the project, like the design. We have also got the quantity surveyor consultant to give us a detailed idea as to the construction cost. For the construction cost estimate, well, in fact, the Project Cost Control Office under the Development Bureau has examined it. For the figure of $31.9 billion, it is a reasonable estimate. We didn't plug it from thin air. As to the DBO model cited by Dr. Yu, we know that there is a lot of variation internationally. The one mentioned by Dr. Yu is one of the many models, while ours is another. Time has run out, so next, Dr. Fernando Chung. I think Dr. Yu has referred to a very important point. That is, for the DBO approach that we're adopting, is it a deviation from the international practice? And are we giving incentives to the operator to boost the cost so that as far as the D&B part is concerned, the operator can make a huge profit? Now my question is, in the past, I think the administration has come up with different kinds of PPP, that is private-public partnership. Now for this DBO, this is one of the approaches. You may also have design and build, and you may have the operation being sort of contracted out. We've tried different models, and they've been practiced internationally. My question is, the Sports Commissioner has mentioned that we have already given approval to the advanced works despite our objection. This is because we thought that there is no need for a mega venue with 50,000 seats. Now, according to the feasibility study, I want to know if the administration has covered anything that I've mentioned, that is, comparison of different forms of PPP, and what has led you to the choice of the DBO approach. I think that's the question asked by another member, and the public officers have promised to provide information after the meeting, that is, the different models that have been considered. Permanent Secretary, anything else to add? Well, some members have said that perhaps the administration can choose a model under which the model is called DBFO. That is, the government is not paying for the construction. It is an amount of $33.8 billion. As we have already shown you the projected financial implications, I don't think that the cost can be recovered during the contractual period. So the consultant has advised against the DBFO. Now in Singapore, yes, they've relied on the private sector for the financing. It's not that the government doesn't have to pay for it. The government is using another method to pay for it. That is, on a yearly basis, a fee has been or will be given to the operator so as to allow the administration to buy the slot for using the venue. So the government, after all, does pay for it, though in a different format. Now, if the financing is to be the responsibility of the operator, then it will have the largest say. Whoever picks up the bill will have a larger say, and then the others will have their aspirations suppressed. Now, in our case, the government will foot the bill for construction, while the operator will be responsible for the design and operation. And this way, the powers will be more evenly distributed. Chair, I don't think it's satisfactory to have to ask for it before we get the information. Now we are talking about the incentive, the bid incentive for the unsuccessful tenderers. We are actually paying for the cost of bidding. I think for information like this, I think such background information should have been given to us prior to the meeting. If you think that we may be wasting too much paper, you can send us an electronic copy. Then we can read it in advance. I don't know whether we are going to vote on the matter, but if we still have questions after voting on the paper today, we will need to ask more questions when the matter is before the Finance Committee. I think your point has been noted. Mr. Jeffrey Lam. Mr. Chairman, can we have a 5-minute break? You may not need it, but then we're having a 4-hour meeting. I think you're being very understanding. Yes, a 5-minute break. In other words, let's come back and resume at 11:15. Today we have a 4-hour meeting. Thank you.